Hey, it's Nicole from House of Akong, and today we're going to be working on a little project which will get you ready for your summer holiday. Today we will be refashioning two scarves into a maxi-length beach kaftan dress. For this project I'm using two scarves which are approximately 115 centimeters square, but you could use anything else. You could repurpose a duvet cover, curtains, bed sheets, scarves, towels, anything you like. The sky's the limit. It's also a great zero waste or minimal waste project because we are going to be working in rectangular panels, and so you'll be able to maximize the amount of textile that you're using. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Let's first go through some of the design details behind the kaftan. The kaftan is going to have a neckband, which is going to go around the neck and down just past the waist. There is going to be a front and back yoke piece, which is cut as one. I also decided to add a little pleat detail to my yoke, just to help it to fit better over my shoulders, but this is purely optional and you may not really need to do this yourself. Gathered pieces on the front, gathered pieces on the back, and rectangular sleeves that are set in. Now let's delve into the actual pieces that you're going to need and which type and dimensions of fabrics you're going to need to source. First, let's have a look at the yoke. I cut my yoke as a square panel, which was 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. You can cut yours to whatever dimensions you like, depending on how far you want your yoke to go down the front and down the back. But the important thing is to make sure that the width of it is going to at least cover you shoulder to shoulder. We are going to cut a rectangular panel into the neck, which is approximately 17 centimeters across at this point. For the neckband, I used a strip which was 120 centimeters long by 6 centimeters wide, which gave a finished width of 4 centimeters. So 6 centimeters gives us a 1 centimeter seam allowance on each side. If you are going with two different textiles for your neckband, one for the outer and one for the inner lining, then you would cut two of these strips. Alternatively, if you want to cut your neckband on the fold and use the same textile, then you would just need to cut one piece, which is 120 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And that folded will give you our 4 centimeter finish width with a 1 centimeter seam allowance along the unfolded edge. You can make your neckband longer or shorter than 120 centimeters. That is totally your preference. What I suggest is that you put a measuring tape around your neck and decide how long and how far down you want your neckband to be. I am working on repurposing two scarves, which are 115 centimeters square. You may be working with different dimensions, but the important thing is that you need to cut two front pieces and one back piece. The back piece we're going to cut as one panel, and it is going to be gathered on one side where it attaches to the yoke at the back. The front pieces I cut the same dimensions as the back, except I divided that into two so that they could be separated into two different front pieces. These will again be gathered and attached to the front yokes. I determined the length to cut based on the length that I wanted the kaftan to be, but also I made sure that with the sleeve I had enough in the width to be able to attach to the yoke piece and then down into the front pieces. You want to make sure you have enough ease going here to give you enough ease under the armhole. So this is the side that would attach to the yoke and the back and the front, and this would be the finished length of the sleeve. Because I don't have quite enough length in the sleeve to get it to the length that I want, I'm going to use any spare textile from around this section here to create a bit of extra length in the sleeve. The nice thing about this design is the simplicity. You can mix and match different textiles, and because of the rectangular characteristic of the panels that we're going to cut, it creates a really nice zero or low waste project. Now I have my two front pieces cut out. I am going to work on scarf 2 and cut out the back. On the second scarf, which is going to form the back piece, I'm going to cut the same panel off from this scarf as I did for the previous one. Now with my back piece and my two front pieces cut out, I am going to run 2 rows of gathering stitches across the tops of all of these 3 pieces. Now here is my yoke piece cut out, which is approximately 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter. I have drawn in chalk pencil the rectangle that is going to be cut to create the neckline. Now I know the measurements that I'm working to attach the front panels and the back panel. The front panels are going to attach here, and the back panel all the way across here. So I have to gather my front piece so that it measures 16.5 centimeters. And I have to gather my back piece so that it measures 49 centimeters. With the back and the front panels now gathered into the right length, I am going to attach the back piece to the back yoke, and I'm going to attach the 2 front pieces now here to the front part of the yoke. I'm going to do this with wrong sides together and then cover the raw edges on the front with a trim. Now that I have my front pieces and my back piece attached to the yoke, the next stage is to cut and construct the sleeves. Here I have the panel that I had cut for the sleeve, and I'm just laying it here against the side seam to determine how far down to cut it. I want to give myself a generous amount of ease here in the armhole, so this line here seems like a good place to cut the sleeve in order to achieve that. Now I'm going to make those cuts to both of my sleeve panels. I'm also going to mark the center point, which will be the shoulder point, with a pin. Now I'm going to take this to my machine, and I am going to sew each of the sleeves to the left and right sides of the kaftan, matching up the center point here of the sleeve with the shoulder point. I'm going to sew them right sides together, like so. With my sleeves now attached, the next step is to close the bottom of the sleeve seam and carry on down along the side seam. I'm going to give myself a little slit at the bottom, so I'm not going to sew all the way down to the hem. I'm going to stop just by the knee. Now you can see my side seam is closed along the sleeve edge and also down the side seam. I have stopped the stitching roughly about knee level and then carried on splitting this into 2. The next stage here is to attach the neckband. So first, let's construct it. For the outer part of the neckband, I'm going to be using this trim, which is 4 centimeters at its finish width. There is also a 1 centimeter seam allowance on each side. To line the back of the neckband, I'm going to use a strip of this textile here. I'm going to take my quilting ruler and a rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut a 6 centimeter strip all the way down. If you're not using a trim like this, all you need to do is cut yourself 2 strips of 6 centimeter wide fabric of your choice that you're going to use for the neckband. Because my trim already comes sewn with the seam allowances down, I am going to unpick all of that stitching so that I can return this to its original 6 centimeter width. Alternatively, if you just want to use one piece of fabric, you can cut it to a 10 centimeter width, which folded will give you 4 centimeter finished width with a 1 centimeter seam allowance on each side. Now with my trim unpicked and ready, I am going to sew it to the backing strip with right sides together along the line that is going to be closest to the body and furthest away from the garment. So I'm going to put the two strips together and sew along this line, along the 1 centimetre seam allowance. Now I am going to understitch on the wrong side so that I catch the seam allowance onto the reverse of the neckband. To finish off the raw edges of the neckband, and to add a fun little decorative element, I am going to attach this gold beaded fringe to the bottom of the neckband. Now it's time for us to cut out the neckline. I have run a line of stay stitching along the seam line of the neck, and now I'm going to make a cut which is 1 centimetre in from that stay stitching, and that will become my seam allowance. And now I'm just going to snip into these corners, being careful not to cut my stay stitching. With the neckband now constructed, I am going to pin it to the garment along the neckline with right sides together. I'm going to match up the two centre back points and then go evenly round each side. With the neckband pinned into place, I just want to pinch it together now and make sure that it is evenly spaced on both sides. Now that I'm satisfied with the spacing, I'm going to go ahead and take it to the machine and stitch along this edge all the way around the neckband. My neckband is now attached to the outside, but before I go ahead and finish off the neckband on the inside, there's one last thing I'm going to do, which is finish the raw edges of the front pieces here. To do that, I'm going to use another trim. I'm going to use this little mini bobble trim, and I'm going to attach it to the front length with right sides together, fold it back, and then top stitch along. With the front edges now neatened with the trim, the next step is to close the neckband. I have pre-neatened the raw edge by pressing under the same amount of the seam allowance, which is 1 centimetre, and just to keep the look nice and clean, I am going to hand stitch that closed by slip stitching the folded inside of the neckband into this line of stitching here. So it's going to close like this. The final stage of the process is to attach my fastenings along the front of the neckband. I'm using 5 of these frog fastenings in gold, which I think will match the look and feel of my neckband perfectly. To attach them, I'm just sewing them on in a T shape. With the fastenings now completed, the project is done. So there you have it, 2 scarves and some scrap textiles transformed into a beach to bar kaftan dress. Hope you enjoyed this project. Join me next time.